Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another Snap No Tap podcast. I'm Tony Cecchine, along with Martin Witkowski. Dino Martino, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Tony. I'm enjoying the last few warm days of the fall, and then I'm gonna pack away all my summer clothes and get the winter jackets out for the next 12 months.
Yeah, I actually did that today. Not the jacket part, but I put some stuff up in the attic and I'm moving stuff around and trying to get things arranged. Yeah, even though I don't really go out, I want to go out. Yeah, though I think it's okay that we get the four seasons, and for those folks who don't live in Chicago or land or whatever, our winters the last several years have been relatively mild. I mean, we do get some storms, but don't you think the winters have been getting milder?
Yeah, they're not bad. And speaking of going out, I thought we didn't talk about this, but one of the iconic Chicago landmarks is closed. We talked about the Drake, which renovated, but the Signature Room is now closed. For those who don't know, Signature Room was a beautiful restaurant with awesome views of the lake at the Hancock Building. So that's been there for years, and it's just like a real shame that it closed down.
Why? I didn't hear about this.
It was pretty sudden, and nobody really knows what their plans are going to be. That's beautiful space. They're going to do something, I'm sure, eventually. But it's hard to believe that things have gone to this point where people just don't want to go out anymore.
I was just talking to somebody about that just moments ago, really, about because my friend Scott wants to go to downtown Chicago. I mentioned that to you, but his health is just, I don't think it's going to, well, we'll try, but I don't see it. So I was telling my friend, Lori number 3, I know a lot of Loris, so they all have to be numbered. Lori number 3 about Chicago, and she's, well, you'll meet this person, you'll meet women, this or that. No, I said, it's not like it was 20 years ago. I said, the people just don't go out. I said, a lot of it, especially when it's involving women, like with Scott or whoever, they do the internet so much, the online dating. It's like they don't even go out to meet anybody anymore. They do the bullshit online. And of course, we've all done the online thing, and I think it's a big thumbs down. I mean, you always hear about the people who got married or this or that, but they don't ever talk about all the failures.
Right. Yeah. And we've also complained about how people don't want to come out and, just get a workout in anymore either. That's now a physical presence is really hard to come by. But we did have a seminar last weekend, and we did have a few people come out, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah, this month we'll just get, or not, well, October. We'll come up next week. We'll give the firm date. Yeah, it was a great little thing, and I like. Somebody had emailed me and about what are you going to teach and so on, and I tried to tell them, and I thought this should have been a positive. In most people's minds it is, but in this person's, I guess it wasn't a positive. And I said, it's potluck. If one of the participants wants to see something, let's talk about it and I'll show it. The next person, what do they want to see? I'll show it. I'm capable of doing that. I don't have to have things planned, and I like that because it's spontaneous for me. And I always work the best that way, and it takes off the planning on my part. So, like, for example, I could teach something. I'll just say, a toe hold seminar, whatever. Maybe the people just aren't into that, because, well, I'm a white belt or I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu and I'm not allowed to do toe hold, so I'm not coming. Whereas, well, I could still teach you stuff that would, elevate you. So, yeah, I like our format. I like that we keep it that way. And we did some boxing. some sparring and some ground stuff, and it's all about scientific principles that it just seems that, you know, people don't want to cover. I don't know if they don't know it. A lot of them don't really know it, but they think it's boring, and it's not. It's the foundation.
Yeah, and you know, because of your body of knowledge, there is always something new. Like I've never seen this pin that you showed us that involves both. It's really a basic entry. It is a crossbody pin, and then you just reach over and control the head and pin the head down and drive into it by, you know, holding onto the chin. It's an absolutely devastating hold. But I haven't seen you show this before. So, you know, I encourage people to come out. There's always something new.
Well, that's what works when you people do something, because, you know, I can't think of everything. And then when you say something, I'm like, well, here's what you do, or here's what you can do. And it taps into my brain. That's just the way I work. But it's also like, you know, music. Like when you're playing, every musician that's quality, okay, always would have, like, let's say you're playing in a nightclub or a bar, you know, small place. You have your tip jar, and that's for people who would come up and request a song. Now, musicians, if they can play the song, that tells you a couple things. They knew the song, but they just didn't think to play it or play it at that point in time. So it took an audience member to say, hey, can you play blah, 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 Moon River, Henry Mancini's Moon River? Oh, yeah, sure, here you go. And that's how it is with me with this stuff. I can't think of, I mean, I know so many techniques and stuff that I can't think of everything. So sometimes when you request something, I'm like, oh, sure, let's do this. I enjoy that.
Right. And we did cover some pretty basic boxing because, you know, our level of experience is low. But you did talk about, you know, being able to kind of reset yourself when under attack and when on defensive, really. And I wanted to tie this out to some of the stuff that was going on in Chicago. So it's made national news. There's been a pretty graphic robbery. I mean, at the end of the day, nothing really happened to this guy because he got pummeled on the way, I guess, on his lunch break. But what I wanted you to talk about is kind of like the basic principles of, you know, being on the street and street safety and realistic fighting, which, you know, were completely absent here from the poor victim. You know, this is what happened, really. This was in an alley, and you can see the victim walk by these guys that were milling around. By the way, one of these people is wearing a full face mask in, you know, 70-degree weather. So right there, you should know something is up. And so this guy walks by them, and I mean, he's literally looking up at the sky.
Yeah. Keep it going.
Oh yeah, yeah. It doesn't take long.
Can you blow that up to full screen?
I can.
Yeah, let's do that. There we go. Yeah, that's much better.
So what do you think about that so far?
Well, totally preventable. Well, all right. Let's start with the aggressor, the bad guy. He's not very tough. That's a good thing, because you can see he doesn't really know how to throw a punch, and all of that is good for the victim here, because he could have got waylaid and knocked unconscious from that very first blow. But as you mentioned, the guy, I guess it's the other guy that had a full face mask. This guy's walking past two people, nonchalant. Yep, looking up in the sky, you know, as if there's no care in the world. That's a problem. Now, what we don't see is how much of a warning did this guy have before he approached those two guys? So, like, what I'm saying is, was the victim further down the alley and walked all the way through? Because he shouldn't have even approached them. He should have turned around in that alley and went the other way. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but he had a chance to go down a busier street. You know, then going down another alley seems to be just doubling your risk.
Exactly. And not only going down that, right, exactly. So you can't nonchalantly go about this, okay, as if there's not a care in the world. He could have went another way. He could have started running, okay, which is a smart move, to at least create distance. And unfortunately, you and I can't see the rest of this neighborhood. I'm not sure. This looks like it's the north side for sure, but I don't know where.
It's Bucktown
Um,
somewhere. I don't know
huh?
exactly where. It's
Bucktown?
Bucktown. Yeah, somewhere
All
around
right.
Gaiman.
Well, I don't know if there's businesses or gangways to go into, but you have to do something. But he had no situational awareness whatsoever, and that's a problem. Thank goodness. We'll see the rest of this, but thank goodness that the guy didn't stick him with something right away. Okay, let's watch. So far, those blows are. I don't know if the other guy's stomping on him. It's hard for me to see, but
It looks like they're trying to get his bag off.
yeah, the punches really aren't. Now there's a car driving by. I mean, that's he's fighting, I guess, to keep his bag. I mean, it's almost. I mean, I'm not laughing at it. It's just almost. These guys don't look like they're. How can I word it? Like serious, right? Because obviously they could, if they knew if they were tough, they could put a hell of a beating to this guy, and use weapons as well. I don't know what the final outcome was, but so far so good, I guess you could say. Uh,
Yeah, there isn't really much more to this. I mean, the reality is the person just ended up with some cuts and bruises.
yeah,
But
thank
what I
goodness.
wanted to kind of focus on is the fact that, he didn't really get knocked down with this punch. So when this happened right here, he didn't even get
Yeah,
hit in the face. He kind of got clothesline.
yeah, and it looks like and he kind of lost his balance up against that fence too. You know, people have to understand something. Let's say the victim here did better, okay, and was able to escape and or threw a couple of blows. I'm looking at the bigger picture here, and I'm going to focus on the fact that those two bad guys weren't that tough. They just weren't, okay? They weren't very skilled. They didn't even seem very mean. Matter of fact, when the one fell down, it looked like he was
He
laughing
was
a little.
laughing. Yeah,
Yeah, I
he
mean, this
was
is almost like
incredulous.
yeah, and he said something to the guy, and it just didn't look uh like there was a lot of frenetic energy going on. And again, I'm saying that's a good thing for the victim because it could have been terribly worse. What's bad is when you survive it or people watch this and try to become educated from it. There are some serious as a heart attack people out there, bad guys that this outcome would not have been like this. Okay. And that's what you have to always keep in mind. This victim is lucky to be alive because if these are super hardcore people, he'd be probably dead. And he's got to learn to be completely oblivious or to not be oblivious because learning how to fight wasn't even the problem. Okay. It wouldn't have taken him much training to be able to defend himself. It was all of that not paying attention, being nonchalant, not looking at the clues that this guy had a full face mask on. You just don't want to approach people like that. It's not smart.
Right. And like I thought that maybe if with some basic experience, I'm not even talking about being skilled, but like, that first punch missed. If he was able to kind of reset himself and then just make a run for it, he would have been better off.
Oh, absolutely. But see, that's where it comes into play. You've got to know how to keep your guard. You got to know, your the real guard, standing up on your feet with your hands up, boxing guard. And you have to know your footwork and your angle. So like you said, you can run away. Um, it was just strange that the whole setup like that it's interesting to see it. Okay. And he got lucky. I mean, I guess he really didn't because he got mugged, but he did get lucky. It could have been far worse. Let's see what he learns from that, if anything. But I thought, didn't he have earbuds on or maybe not?
I don't even think he even had that. He was just like oblivious to everything,
Yeah.
right? And
Looks like he was
and
eating something and
Yeah, I was eating a pizza. But like, if you get lucky that these guys didn't kill you with the first shot, there's an opportunity to make something out of this, to get out of this situation a little better than he did.
Yeah, you just don't want to. You want to try to avoid. There's no heroes left. Okay, just don't be a hero. Just avoid it because you don't know what you can open yourself. You're opening up a can of worms potentially. You don't know what you get yourself into. Avoid it. Avoid it. Avoid it. Avoid it. Um, and another note too, that car that drove by, you know, when where I live now, there's no alleys, but in Chicago there was a lot of alleys. Cleveland didn't have any alleys, at least not around where I went. But I learned real quick to always, even when I'm driving a car, try to look down the alleys if I can, just to see shit like this, just to see if there's any sort of problem. Um, and even for someone who's not skilled like you or I are, um, if you see something like that, just call 911. Just report it.
That's right. So that's another thing I learned is that you can call in suspicious people. They don't have to be guilty of a crime for you to call them in.
Mhm.
The cops will show up. So, like people should just report these things and hopefully prevent them from happening.
Well, how many times
Um,
have the cops showed up to see you then? Right?
just one so far.
Because you look pretty suspicious to me.
Yeah, right. Right. And, it could be more serious. It could be, it could be end up like this guy here, the old um, Jim
Jim
Rockford
Rockford.
punch to the stomach. I mean, how many times have we seen this happen, Tony? I mean, this is terrible. That's a brutal beating.
Yeah, well, first of all, he was supposed to be the best pool player in Norman, Oklahoma. He was supposed to be a real good pool player. I only saw a brief him doing 2 shots in some clip with Waylon Jennings, and he didn't look all that good. But I mean, I heard Minnesota Fats even said he was a good player, and just Jay Helfert told me that he was a good player. So, but yeah, your stomach boxers train hard, their conditioning, and it used to be, well, it should probably still is, that if a boxer would go down from a body shot, they would get raked over the coals by the announcers and by everybody else because they're not in condition. Now, none of us can walk around in that kind of shape all the time. You can't. I mean, you could get your stomach though fairly rough, fairly hard, but you have to see the punch coming. You have to, like in a boxing match, you're always tensed up. Legend has it that's how Harry Houdini got killed. He died
That's
because
right.
the punch to the stomach he wasn't prepared for. I mean, that could be a wives' tale, but it does make sense if you're not expecting it. It could be a problem. But Rockford, well, he did get beat up. James Garner did get beat up once in real life in a car accident, which was you should
Oh, I
read
didn't
it.
know that. I saw him
Yeah.
get beat up in that show 1,000 times.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what was so great about the show. Rockford Files was the best because it was realistic, but yeah, again, you have to train your body. I mean, if you're going to be in peak shape, to absorb those body shots. Okay. And I mean, it makes a difference. I mean, when you're in shape, you can absorb most body shots, especially from unskilled or not highly trained or soft punchers all day long. And that's good because, then you can uh, protect your face more. But also add into this in a street fight, even any good boxer will break the rules. And instead of hitting you to the stomach, they'll go just a little bit lower and hit you in the groin. And
Right.
that's, what you have to worry about.
I,
So
yeah, I also heard announcers say that it actually helps with body blows to be fat. It's just not a good trade-off, right? Like you can absorb a body blow better if you're fat, but like then you're fat. That's another set of problems.
yeah, you're not going to go 12 rounds, which, if you're 100 pounds overweight. Yeah, I get it. But getting to the groin punch, this is where angles of footwork come into play. Okay. If in that situation, and I know this is just a quick clip, Rockford was in essence almost squared up to the guy. He was presenting a full target. You never want to do that. You never want to let people get that kind of angle on you, where they have access. And again, I think this is where sport, okay, from the sporting element of it, you'll learn the footwork or the angles, but also the negative about the sport is that you're never concentrating on protecting your groin because you don't have to. Okay. In, boxing or MMA or wrestling, the groin's off limits. And that's a big, huge negative. So there's a trade-off. Yes, you learn principles, but you can also end up handicapping yourself because you've exposed vital targets that you shouldn't expose.
Right. And what you're saying is that you can't train your groin to be resistant to punches like you can't train your body, right? Like that will always be a critical blow.
Yeah, your eyes, your throat, your groin. Yeah, those are through. You can train your neck, but I mean the groin, the eyeballs. Yeah, you got some problems. You can't. Yeah, you can't toughen those up.
The other thing that you see in sport is like there's some guys that have worked out a level of endurance or absorption to just even like regular headshots, right? And they say they have a great chin, but I hate watching guys like that because it almost makes me sad that in a way sooner or later this catches up with them. And I wanted to show you this other clip of a guy who was legendary for a couple years for being extremely resilient, right? But again, you can see that he's fighting a smaller opponent.
Which guy are we looking for? Which colored pants?
So the red corner, the red pants is a guy named Joe Joyce. So he was an Olympian, and he was known as kind of a juggernaut. He would just go there and punch his way through people. But look at the number of blows that, first of all, he's missing a lot. And then the smaller man who fights a little bit like Joe Frazier.
He does.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's almost like a tribute. But what ends up happening is like the number of punches the smaller guy lands is just a lot.
Well, something doesn't look right with Joe Joyce. His footwork, he looks flat-footed. There's no bounce in his step. There's no head movement really. I don't know if he's injured or if he's just not in condition.
This is the way he fights. And I hate watching him because, he's a giant. Maybe you don't get that perspective because the other guy is pretty big too, even though he looks much smaller. But he's a 6'9" guy.
Oh, but he's leaning a lot too, leaning forward a lot, his posture. The smaller guy is stealing the round. I mean, he's got a lot, he's given strange angles, and you're right. He looks very much like Joe Frazier coming in under. Well, that's what you got to do. I mean, when you're fighting a guy that, it's got 6 inches on you probably or whatever. That was a little wild, but boy, I don't even see any snap in Joyce's punches. Oh, he went right down the middle there. See how easy? Well, Joyce is always right in front of him. Okay.
Yes. And these kinds of fights make me anxious. Like I don't like watching it because I feel like something bad's about to happen. You have that feeling of dread. And
what's the other guy's name?
That's Carlos Takam. He's a Cameroonian based out of France, but he's an experienced guy. Many fights.
Well, I mean, he's probably no champ here level, but what he's doing is he's giving weird angles. See, he fights the way I like to have people fight. The way I always movement. I always say, let's move my head or move your head. Move. So you're hard to pick off. Whereas Joe Joyce is always there. I mean, his head is right there. Takam is missing those wild hooks because he's out of range. It's nothing that Joe Joyce is doing. Joyce is just almost standing his ground, but Takam just doesn't seem to have the distance figured out just yet.
Yeah, he's got a long way to go. I mean, the other guy's like 4 or 5 inches taller than him.
Right,
so
right.
It's a much bigger distance that he has to cover. But in general, he's like landing a lot of shots on Joe Joyce, and that makes it, again, like a bad watching experience for me. I get agitated when I see this. Like something bad's going to happen. And it does, right? Maybe not in this fight, but the next time he fights somebody who is more his size, and this is a fight that happened just this past weekend. And you can see, let me share the screen again. You can see, this is what I always expect to happen with Joe Joyce.
He's puffy already. Well, rewind that, please. Well, he's low.
He's leaning forward, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, that's no good. But his hands are low. Oh, he's trying to do like a Philly. Okay, hold on. Let's see what's going on here. Keep it at this tempo so I can.
These guys are both giants. This is a
Well,
6'9" and another 6'9" guy. So the size disparity is gone here.
well, the Asian, or he looks like he's Asian. He
He's
doesn't
Chinese, yeah.
shape. Oh my goodness, yeah. See, he just walked right into that. He drops his hands and he doesn't have any head movement. Um, and he got dropped. Can we see that again, like in full speed, like
Sure.
regular speed? Yeah. Okay. So he had a lot of power in that hook because if you notice his body, it was angled so much, it was under torque, and he just let loose with that right hand. And man, that that right cross just had all that torque behind it. He got his hip behind it. Maybe slow it down now so you can watch that portion of it. Um, well, okay, you got to rewind it now, just a second. Okay, so what you want here, he's fighting southpaw there. Okay, boom, there's the torque. See, that hip just rotated right through it, and phew,
He never got up.
no.
So, I think what you've mentioned before when we do some training is that there should be like constant movement. You can't just lean forward and move. And then when you do that and you get into out of position, you should be trying to reset. This guy never resets. He never goes back. He never resets. He never does the things that make him less of a target, which is again why I don't like watching him, because I feel like he's gonna get drilled, and sooner or later he does. And just sometimes he fights guys just don't have the power to put him down.
It's in his defense, it's difficult when you're that big. That's a lot of conditioning, a lot of, it's hard when you're that tall. And back in the old days, it was rare that you had a guy that big. Jess Willard, but he got demolished by Dempsey, and then later on Primo Carnera, but we know all about Primo Carnera. But yeah, taking that all out of play, you have to know the reset. You have to sometimes, when things aren't going your way, there's two things to do. Well, there's three things to do: punch, but tie up or back out. Okay. And that's sometimes when you got to clinch, when you just got to slow things down, clinch for a second or two, whatever, let the ref break it up, or back out, not back like straight back, but, get out of it, with an angle, work those angles. It just looked to me, I mean, I don't know either of these fighters personally. Conditioning is not there, for sure. These flat-footed guys, not a lot of movement.
Right. But the other thing that you always talk about, or at least you always point out how terrible our footwork is, and I always feel like it's a lot harder to work on footwork than it is to work on the hands. Like, I've just recently looked at a couple of recordings that we've made from our training sessions, and like my hands are better than I thought they were, but my footwork is 3 times worse than I thought it was. Like, I'm just a horrible plotting monster. And
Well, that's on your good days.
right. And like, I can see why it's really hard for you to correct that, until we like do something in person, because I don't have the perspective of depth or distance when we're just talking about it. It's almost something you got to see and you got to feel. So
And
again,
also angles for me, camera angles or visual angles, like, I'm trapped. Okay. I'm getting that one angle wherever the camera's set. Whereas when you're in person, I can move a little bit, and, I can shift my perspective so I can see things. there's a lot going on with all of it, with your footwork, with your hands, with your, your hips, your back, your neck, your head. There's a lot for a coach to watch. And importantly, though, you first as a coach, I look at the overall picture. Like, what's the most glaring thing? Normally it's either, well, it's a combination of things. Your hands are down, your chin is way out, you're off balance. These are things that, you should be able to pick up as a coach right away. And you yell out the advice, keep your hands up, keep your chin down, or whatever. Then, but there's other stuff, like your footwork. Is it too wide? Is it too narrow? Are you moving in the right direction? Is your balance off when you make that move? Because changing your footwork or changing your stance, your positioning, is of no benefit to you if you're going to end up off balance. Okay. Now in this last punch we just saw, he was going to go down no matter what. But many times fighters can get knocked down just because they're off balance. All right. Now in a boxing match, you might get right back up. In a street fight or in an MMA match, now you're in a ground fight situation, right? Because a guy might just jump right down on the ground on you, and you don't need that. So all of this comes into play. But now I'm glad you got a little appreciation of what I have to put up with your footwork. And I keep yelling at you. So I'm not yelling at you, but telling you, hey, move right, watch your angles. It's really important. And it's hard, of course, because you're just using a heavy bag in your basement. You don't have somebody coming at you that's dynamic. But you've got to get that footwork correct against a heavy bag before you even think about doing it against a live guy.
Right. That's why, again, I encourage people to come to a seminar, because in that physical space, we spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes drilling footwork, but I have a lot now that I can think about. You know what I mean? Like, people show up to the seminar, they get ideas, and they can work with that on their own time and their own opportunity. One of the other things that I wanted to kind of touch upon is that we talked about also how to stand and how to really cover up and get low, not get stood up, not get exposed, and kind of like hide your vitals by being covered. And there's a guy that I like watching, this guy Demetrius Andrade. He has like a very low stance, and you'll see that a lot from him, where he's just really, really low. And some of the commentators will say that this is like advantageous because he's able to react very quickly. But I think you pointed out that this also keeps him out of harm's way because he's so compact.
Well, I don't like the fact that he's dropping his hands a lot. You could still do that and tighten up, but that's just his way. But yeah, you're right. And this is okay in boxing. Naturally, we understand that in a grappling situation, you got to watch that the guy doesn't anchor on your head, and have that altitude over you so he could come over top. But also conversely, if a boxer who also knows how to wrestle a little bit is getting that low, he's already beaten your head. He's probably going to beat your hands, and he's beating your hips. So he can throw a few punches or do what he's got to do, but he's got a good shot on getting in on your legs as well. So there's pros to this as well.
Right. So I think I mentioned this at the seminar. Like, I remember being very active with my hands, like wrestling. Just if the guy gets really low, I would try to put my hand on his head just so I could feel where he's going to do that shot, because I'd get nervous, that he's got a good angle on the legs. And, a guy with a quick shot, I don't know if I can sprawl fast enough to avoid it. Like, it's just that him being that low is to his advantage and my disadvantage.
Well, it is. And, coming again from a striking standpoint, all right, yeah, he may be vulnerable to getting kneed, a knee strike or a front kick of some sort. But you have to, once again, take this in the concept of boxing. And yeah, it does prevent, certain targets you're not going to present. Like we were talking about earlier, the liver, the body shot. that's going to be almost impossible to get on this guy the way he was. And he had a very extreme angle there. At certain times, he was almost sideways to his opponent.
Yeah, I'm trying to find there's a particularly good place where he uses that to land like a, let me see if I can find it. But
Okay.
he lands like a 1-2 that basically knocks the guy down, and it's
Let me
very
see.
quick. And like you said, it's because he's coming from this angle that is very advantageous.
No, that's a crouch, all right. See, I just don't like him dropping that hand. Like right there, that stuff I don't like. So he'd have been in a lot of trouble in an all-in situation. But let's continue on.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the knockdown.
No,
Okay, there it is.
right there. Well, that was just a straight right hand. Can you
Yeah,
rewind it again?
yeah, but it's nice because it's so basic.
Right hand is jab coming at you, and then as it's retracting, that left is following it right up, and sometimes it becomes imperceptible. You can't see it. You can't see that left coming. In this guy's case, also would be the opposite. It would be the left first and then the right hand. Very well executed. That was textbook. Boom, boom. See? And he just went right. Man, that's just really nice. Can't.
Yeah. See, that's what I
You
like.
can't-
I like that is the level of wizardry that I've learned to appreciate by watching a lot of boxing. And then Joe Joyce eating a bunch of punches is cringy.
Well, again, he's not mobile, Joe Joyce. He's not a mobile guy. He's a big lumbering guy, but I don't see LeBron James is pretty big too, and he ain't a boxer, but he's got great footwork. He got good movement, So this is just stuff that you really need to work on. Maybe he has to drop weight, whatever. We're just working on his fitness will make him if he's lighter, it'll make him faster and move. But once again, we don't know what's going on with him. Because of being 6'9" his whole life and maybe heavy, and he's obviously walking around heavier than what he's here. His joints can take a big toll. He may not have the mobility already, even at his age. His knees, his hips, may not give him the ability to move like you would think a guy his age would be able to move. These are questions that I have. I don't have answers because I don't know the man. We'd have to ask him directly.
Right. Well, these are also not young guys. These guys, ex-Olympians from 8 years ago that are just like finishing their careers trying to make that last heavyweight run. But but Sonny Liston looked pretty good in his 40s or whatever he was. Like nobody actually knows his age for sure. People have to estimate it.
Yeah. Well, he's trying to make a comeback. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah, Sonny Liston has been sparring secretly with JFK, John F. Kennedy Jr.
And Elvis.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Jersey Joe Walcott was an older guy. Well, he's not old compared to some of the guys nowadays, apparently. But, I think who am I to tell these guys what to do? It's their life. It's their career. It's their money and income. They should do what they want to do. But your health, especially in boxing, we're not talking about getting a knee replaced. You're talking about brain damage here that, even if you make an extra X amount of money, are you going to be able to really enjoy it because your faculties are gone? That's what you got to worry about.
Right. And this is complete aside, and I don't know if anybody will care about this, but I listened to a little bit of Jim Lampley.
I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't know he was married to the lobster claw lady. It's crazy. Like there was a newscaster out of California who I think she was related to the family of the circus freaks. The lobster man with the.
I saw the lobster man when I was a kid.
Right. So he had a whole bunch of kids, and one of his kids was a newscaster. She was a lady who was on all these California, I think LA-based newscasts. And she was apparently very, beautiful. I don't have a visual of what she looked like, but Jim Lampley was married to her. I mean, she was his third wife and he was her second husband or something like that. But, it's like a royalty, television royalty.
Man, I don't know if I'd want a hand job from her, man.
Or a foot job. She was apparently, clothed weird structures on both ends.
Well, the actual lobster man, I saw him and his kids, and I remember him throwing a ball and the kid, can't catch. He murdered, I think, his family, or at least his wife. I think he might have killed the kid too. He went to jail, prison. Yeah, it's bizarre. Yeah, no, I didn't know about Jim Lampley. I had forgotten. Well, he used to do all the broadcasts and stuff, I don't know if I don't think he had any actual boxing training, but
No, he just hung out in the right place at the right time. He had a lot of stories about Muhammad Ali and all the stuff that went down in all the boxing fights that happened in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He's got a very good memory. He's like one of those guys that just snaps to with facts and figures that I have to Google to come up with. And then all this.
boxing was so it was really different back then. Real like in the 70s before all the different weight divisions. They started to creep up around then, probably maybe even earlier. I don't remember, but yeah, and we just had like legendary figures. I mean, it's not just Ali. I mean, he was at the pinnacle, but I mean, so many of the heavyweights were legendary figures, and then you had guys like Carlos Monzon, and before him Sugar Ray Robinson and Willie Pep, and all of these, just Rocky Marciano, on and on. These were like, and I'm sorry, but MMA doesn't carry that kind of clout, and I don't even know if boxing carries that. I mean, you got guys like Floyd Mayweather, but once again, I don't know if these guys like Floyd Mayweather is what I would consider a household name. I don't know if people who don't follow boxing would know him. But back in our day, people who didn't follow boxing certainly knew who Muhammad Ali was.
Right, for sure. And like I was just watching recently something about Sonny Liston, who was not liked enough for the position of because he was a heavyweight champ, and then like he was kind of not catching on with the crowds because it was the expectation that everybody on that level would be a household name. So he expected an airport full of people come greet him when he won the championship, because that's just how it went. Now these guys will walk through an airport, nobody will know who they are.
Yeah, and and it's funny because MMA is like far more UFC, I should say, I guess. It's far more exposure because they're always on, but it's like pay-per-view, so I don't know how many people are seeing it. I mean, it's diehard fans know people by name or know them by face, no doubt. But yeah, you have athletes sometimes that just transcend,
Right.
Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, in baseball, the Jim Brown. Football's a little more difficult. Because, well, maybe not so much now, but back then it was a little more difficult. Mainly because, they wear helmets, and a lot of them didn't do TV commercials and all of that jazz. So people may have heard of, for example, Jim Brown or Gale Sayers, but well, what do they really look like? Nowadays you pretty much know what these guys look like.
You're so right. I heard that that's why they ditched headgear for amateur boxing in the Olympics, because nobody knew who these people looked like and they couldn't follow them.
Makes sense. Yeah, we're not marketing guys. Believe me, if I was a marketing guy, I'd be a millionaire. I don't know anything about marketing, but I know a little bit about common sense, and that is, if I don't recognize you, there's for example, actors, right, or actresses. I don't recognize them because I don't follow acting right now, so I don't know the names even. But yeah, back in the day when I was a young kid, I don't remember what athletes looked like. Baseball I did because I collected baseball cards, but I didn't have football cards, so I had no idea what a lot of football players look like. I literally had no clue.
And that's why we're stuck with these like YouTube influencers, because they effectively reach out more people than a guy that won the heavyweight championships in the UFC. I mean, like, who's tracking that? But everybody's got their phone and their top 5 favorite, personalities. Mr. Beast.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started on all that shit. It's just sad. Yeah. Oh, legendary, YouTuber, TikTok influencer dead at the age of 15. Like, what? Who? And I'm not making that up. You've read about it. I mean, who are these?
Yeah, but you and I don't know, but other people do. You know, that's the thing. We're the ones that are still going to the gym in person and seeing things in person and going to bars in person and complaining the signature room is closed. You know, we're the dinosaurs. Oh
We're
well.
the dinosaurs. That's right. Yeah, cutting because we're coming close to winding down. We're keeping these very shorter podcasts, but what Martin, I'm assuming, was trying to address to everybody out there is that there's subtleties that we looked at the gangs in the bad guys in the gangway there in the alley throwing punches and strikes. We looked at some of these other boxers throwing punches that knock down, but with the exception of that one punch, which was really effective, most of this could have been it wouldn't have happened. It could have been defeated if you just learned some subtleties like awareness. Even in a boxing ring, you need to be aware. Like Joe Jacobs or whatever his name is, Joe Joyce, needs to be aware of what's going on. Know that I'm right in front of this guy. That's not a right place for me to be. I should be moving my head. I'm not moving my head. That's all awareness. It's a different kind of awareness than the guy in the alley needed, but both of them needed footwork, movement, and the wherewithal to plan an exit. And in a boxing match, the exit wouldn't be running through the ropes. The exit would be finishing the fight by setting up for body shots or head shots afterwards. So these are things that I don't believe a lot of people train enough. They want the flashy stuff, the head kicks or the knockout punches. That's all fine and dandy, but man, if you know how to defend and move and all of this, you can almost negate all those knockout blows.
Right. Well, on that note, Tony, let's wrap it up. And we're gonna plan this October seminar, and we're gonna come back with some details, but it will be basically the same thing, and we'll have fun.
Well, good. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody out there for watching and or listening. You guys mean a lot. We don't get to meet you people in person mainly because you're from maybe all over the world, and we don't even hear from you, but we just know that you're out there, and that means something. So thank you, everybody. And thank you to Martino, and I'll see you this week during your private lesson on Zoom.
You bet.
Bye-bye.